Well, the geese are flying by, not goose season. But I've been thinking about this controversy about hunting public land that's either close to private, or the guys that are, you got to get way back in there, you got to get away from everybody else, to find good animals. And I've thought of a couple of examples just this last year. There was a guy that had come out. He had kind of just done a self drop camp, do-it-yourself kind of hunt. And I met him on a non-resident forum and talked to him a little bit, and then I actually got to talk to him in person while he was out there. And him and his buddies were getting ready after that hunt to go to Colorado. And we're hiking 10-12 miles back in there. We've never been there, but we know this is going to be a great spot. And I think there's 4 of them, and they hiked back in there for 7 days or so, and they came back out and they never saw an animal. At my Frank Church hunt, where we went down there bear hunting, we crossed the river, we got away from all the other hunters, and we barely saw any tracks, let alone animals, in a couple of the spots that we went to. The one we had to row across the river in a raft, the other one we waded across a stream, a couple of them, and hiked 3 miles back in. We were away from everybody, and the only thing that we saw were a couple of bighorn sheep, maybe a mile off. And so then with the spot that we went to after that, we drove into a camp, parked the car, got out and hiked, and immediately we started seeing bear tracks. So it goes to show, and granted, this is all public, none of that was particularly close to private. But when it comes to hunting, particularly the deer and the elk, I see just as many, if not more, deer and elk on or close to the private as I do, way back up in the mountains. And oftentimes they're better animals, just because they're getting that nutrition that they need, and there's food, there's water sources, there's cover all nearby. And so what some of us have taken to doing is just sitting up on hilltops where we can see these fields that border public, and find out what bucks are in the area, what's coming to water, what time. And then when they go up into their beds in the morning, we can find out pretty well where they're at and where they're going, move over, get set up into a position. And of course, it doesn't always work. Sometimes they change course, or maybe the hunter can't get there, or we can't get there for whatever reason, or we can't get there fast enough, but at least we're finding them. And then there's been times, where we've gone back and we've been miles and miles away from private, and we run into good bulls there. I had a really nice bull come in, and we were probably 5 or 6 miles from private, way up high in a basin, 8,000 feet or so, and called him in, and unfortunately we missed, but it was a good bull. It was a great hunt. We were in the elk every day, and getting shot opportunities. So it's finding where the animals are at, I think, is the biggest point. I think a lot of people miss that. Yes, you can hike 10 miles back in and set up. Unless you really know that area or have someone that has knowledge of that area, there's no guarantee. At least with that private public fringe there, you can get up there with a minimum of effort a lot of times. Sometimes you can just drive by the fields and glass the fields and see if there's animals coming in there, and see if there's any quality bucks or any good bulls that are down there in the hay fields or in the grain fields. And it doesn't matter if it's out west or back east, and then just move in behind there. You might have to hike a ways, to get back up in there. It might be a hard hike, but if you've got a good quality animal that you want to go after and you see it down in there, it might be worth the effort. We got a couple of good bucks doing that this year. I shouldn't say a couple. There was at least one that we got, and there was others that we got on too that we're coming across. And the same thing with elk. And I've used this tactic for a number of years, where I'll set up right on that edge, that first half mile, and I've had 300 class bulls coming in almost every year, or probably every year that I start using this tactic, really. Sometimes we get shot, sometimes we don't, but we know they're there, and it's just a matter of time before they cross that fence line. So don't get too hung up on the public, close to private, in deep. Just go to where the animals are. That's the biggest thing, and that's how you're going to be successful as a hunter. I know I was watching a video just a little bit ago where some guys were talking about, well, if you're on these paved roads, you know, those are going to be the more heavily trafficked areas where a lot of vehicles are parked, and guys are going to hike in from there. And then if you get off on some of the gravel roads and the lesser roads and trails, it starts thinning out a little bit. And that's very true. A lot of your hunters aren't going to go very far from the road, but there's also a reason for that. If they don't have to go far from the road and they can be successful in that, why go any farther than what you need to? Where I got my cow elk this last year, I don't think I was more than a half mile from a road. I might have only been a quarter mile as the crow flies. At least to where she went down. I was farther back in because that was a long shot. But I mean, the hike out didn't take very long. It was an easy hike, all downhill, gradual downhill. And I had her out myself, hour and a half, if that. Nailed the entire elk in 3 trips. So it just, you know, and that's the second elk that I've had like that, where I haven't had to go very deep to get it. And same thing with bucks. I had one hunter this year. We came out, we pulled up into a spot to glass, and there was a little buck in the corner of a field of private, and just past that field was public. Well, let's just sit here and wait for a minute. And the guy was a meat hunter. He didn't care about the rack. And so pretty soon that buck started moseying over onto public. And so we drove up. As soon as we crossed public, I said, get out. He got out, went over, shot it 50 yards out to private. You know, he filled his tag. Some people might say, well, that's a little bit unethical, but we didn't chase the deer over into public. He just went that way. I can't remember. He might have seen my truck and just kind of trotted over, but he wasn't spooked or anything. And we didn't trespass. So everything was legal and above board. Ethical kill. It's a 50-yard drag out to the truck. So I hope this helps you guys out. Give you some food for thought. You don't always have to go a long ways to get an animal. Some of the biggest bucks and bulls that I've seen have been within a couple miles of private. And when I say big, I'm talking 350 bulls and 180 and 200 class deer. So you can get trophies where there's easy access, but it's generally a little bit harder than just sitting there. So good luck out there and happy hunting.